I'm really delighted to bring you today's session. We've got a great panel today. As ever, the sessions are recorded. You can use the chat, you can use the Q&A, really interact. We'll have questions at the end, but I'll just introduce today's session. So really delighted to be joined by three speakers today. Rachel Morrison McCormack from Living Wage Scotland, who's going to start our webinar off today. Then we're going to be joined by Thiago from Passion for Social. And last but not least, we're going to be bringing in Elaine Brown from Edinburgh Remakery. So kind of really setting the scene about the context around the living wage, and then hearing from two social enterprise practitioners on why the living wage is important to them. And it really is, I mean, it's interesting. I think Duncan had posted in the chat about the event today. I think the last census that was done in 2019 said that 75% of the social enterprise sector paid the living wage. That's a brilliant stat, but there's still 25% potentially that aren't. And I guess we all will probably sit here and argue that we think it should be 100%. So I guess we're going to hear from people on why they think it's important to their organisation today. So enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Rachel, and then we'll be hearing from Thiago and then Elaine. So thank you for coming today.
Morning, everyone. I'll kick off. So as Naomi said, I'm Rachel Morrison McCormack. I am an accreditation officer with Living Wage Scotland, and I'm really delighted to have the chance this morning to chat with you all about the real living wage and living wage accreditation. Since time is precious today, and we have a packed schedule, I'm going to kick off and get started. So Naomi, if you could pop the slides up, amazing, thank you. Perfect, can we go for slide 2, thank you. Excellent. So to kick off, I think it's always useful first to briefly set the scene by giving some insight into the scale of issues surrounding poverty in 21st century Scotland. So there's currently more than 1 million people living in poverty in our country. We're a small nation. There's only around 5.5 million of us, and 1 million of us are living in poverty. 24% of children who live in Scotland do so in poverty, and what's more, today 65% of these children are living in a home where someone is in paid employment. Back in the 1990s, between 1996 to 1999, almost too many nines here, this figure was only 47%. I say only, still a massive figure, but what we can see is that there's been a marked increase in recent years, and what's more, these figures are likely set to worsen in light of COVID-19 and the issues following the pandemic. We're doomed, I hear you say. And yes, it's easy to find these figures alarming, overwhelming maybe, but there are things we can do. Each and every one of us has a role to play in creating the caring and compassionate society which we all want to live in. And we believe firmly that the real living wage has a key role to play as part of that. Naomi, if we can jump to slide 3. So what is the real living wage? So there's two real living wage rates. One that applies across the whole of the UK, which is currently £9.50, and a separate higher rate for within London, which is currently £10.85. The real living wage is a voluntary rate of pay, which goes beyond the legal minimum. It's calculated independently by the Resolution Foundation and overseen by the Living Wage Commission. It's based on the best available evidence about living standards in London and across the UK each year. It's the only rate of pay calculated according to the real cost of living, and it represents the difference between subsistence living and the ability for a worker to afford a decent quality of life, which I think we can all agree everybody should have the right to, have a decent quality of life and not be in a situation where they're choosing between heating their home and putting food on the table. It's not a situation that we should be in 2021 in Scotland. In positive news, in Scotland, there are now more than 2,000 accredited living wage employers who have taken the stand and the commitment that they're able to take to say that they believe that their staff should be paid a real living wage and ensure that their wages meet at least the cost of living. These employers have collectively uplifted more than 45,000 workers onto the real living wage and put more than £240 million back into the pockets of workers. Can we jump to the next slide, Naomi? So this is a quote from an employee working from a social enterprise who shared with us how being paid the real living wage had helped them. It's given me the freedom to work reasonable hours while being able to support myself financially. I don't worry about having to work every hour possible to live comfortably. It's a powerful quote, it's simple, and I think it's something that, you know, we can all relate to, that you should be able to have that work-life balance and able to pursue a family life as well out with. Can we jump again, Naomi? Thank you. So I'm going to touch now on the benefits of paying the real living wage and of gaining accreditation. As Naomi mentioned in the introduction, we know from Social Enterprise Scotland Census back in 2019 that at that time 75% of social enterprises reported paying the real living wage. So I want to share benefits of gaining the accreditation as well as paying the real living wage, so we're covering both parts of the audience and there's something for everyone to appreciate. So first, let's talk about some of the benefits of paying your staff the real living wage. So 75% of employers, these statistics, first of all, they come from a survey that was taken of living wage employers, asking them to share with us the benefits that they had seen of both paying the living wage and of gaining accreditation. So benefits of paying the real living wage. 75% of employers say it has increased motivation and retention rates for employees. 58% say it has improved relations between staff and managers, and staff also report feeling more valued and appreciated by their employer. These are just some of the benefits that we hear about. You know, we also hear about reduced absenteeism, a happier, more motivated staff, about how when job applications go out, not job vacancies go out, there's an increased number of applications, but also a higher quality of applications. You know, paying the real living wage really does bring a range of benefits. And it's something that, you know, I'm not going to go too far into because we've got two accredited employers to speak later. If we can jump slides again, Naomi. So another quote from a social enterprise employer. So we are committed to helping create a more equal, inclusive, diverse society in which everyone has the same chances. Just jump again, Naomi, please. Thank you. So why become accredited? 86% of employers have said it enhanced their reputation as an employer. Businesses tell us how paying the real living wage and seeking formal accreditation has benefited their organisation's reputation, whether that be through positive media coverage or via their customers who are increasingly aware of the real living wage as being an important aspect of ethical consumerism. I think particularly that could be something, you know, that within the social enterprise sector that could relate a lot to a lot of your employers. 64% also told us that it differentiated the organisation from others in the same industry. And 53% say it has improved recruitment of employees into jobs covered by the real living wage. So as well as paying the living wage, providing a range of benefits for your organisation and your staff, there's also separate benefits from gaining the accreditation and being able to publicly use the We're a Living Wage employer logo and gain that formal recognition of your commitment, and there's a different set of benefits. So it's something that we would encourage employers who are already paying the living wage to think about gaining the accreditation and joining the movement. And also it's adding your voice to those over 2,000 employers in Scotland, including Passion for Social and Edinburgh Remakery and Social Enterprise Scotland, and you know, and being part of that movement to creating a Scotland that is a more caring and compassionate society. Overall, 93% of employers in the survey reported seeing positive benefits in some way or another since they gained living wage accreditation. Can we jump again, Naomi? Thank you. So just one last quote. We always think it comes better from others than just from us. So this is from another social enterprise employer. So we're proud to be part of the real living wage movement as an example of how even small organisations like us can help support and deliver real change to people's lives. Can we skip again? Thank you. So when we speak about the real living wage, we often talk about the immediate impact on the workers. However, there's research that's shown that the real living wage is not only good for workers, it's good for businesses and for our wider society. A fair wage contributes to worker well-being, which in turn leads to better labour relations and higher productivity. The real living wage ensures a worker can meet their basic needs and potentially have a modest amount of disposable income. This enhances physical and mental health whilst contributing to the wider economy. Investing in the workforce, as highlighted in the previous slides, is a benefit to business in terms of reducing recruitment costs, enhancing company reputation, and boosting productivity, which spurs economic growth. I want to touch on the benefits which the real living wage can bring to our wider society. Back in 2018, a report was published by the Smith Institute, which revealed that wider adoption of the real living wage could provide an economic boost to UK cities worth over 1.1 billion. The research asks, what would happen locally if low-paid workers were moved up to the real living wage? Now, the Glasgow City region was the only Scottish example included in this, so it's the only one I have to mention. But if we took the Glasgow City region as an example, the figures are really compelling. If just 1/4 of low-paid workers in the Glasgow City region received a pay rise to the real living wage, the local economy would grow by 27 million. This would be the result of increased tax revenues, less pressure on public services, and an increase in local spending due to workers having more disposable income. So paying the living wage and gaining accreditation, yes, it has benefits for your staff, it has benefits for your workers, benefits for you as an employer, but it also has real benefits for society as a whole, and it is really part of taking the good parts of, you know, what were part of our society before the pandemic and creating an even better society as we come out the other side. If we can jump again, Naomi. So I really want to briefly, I don't want to go into this too much, the criteria to gain living wage accreditation if it's something you are interested in. So there are two key criteria that you have to meet to gain living wage accreditation. So first, as an employer, you must ensure that all your directly employed members of staff aged 18 and over are paid at least the real living wage. And second, accrediting employers must ensure that to the extent permitted by law, all contracted workers who regularly work on your premises are paid the real living wage. So we define regularly as 2 hours a week for 8 weeks consecutively. And this is designed to encompass employers such as cleaners or security, those services that organisations may choose to outsource, understandably, but who also work with you regularly and do provide a crucial part of the running of your business, especially in post-COVID times. So those are the two criteria that you would need to be able to meet to gain accreditation. And if accreditation is something that anybody would like to discuss further, we'd be delighted to chat about that. Can we jump to the second last one? Perfect. So if you want to talk to us about paying the real living wage or accreditation, you can contact me via the email address there. As a final comment from me before I pass on to the other speakers, choosing to pursue living wage accreditation would allow your organisation to show their staff, your clients and the public that you want to do all you can to support your staff and tackle the wider issues of in-work poverty in Scotland, that jobs within social enterprises and the third sector can truly be part of building our economy back better than it was before the pandemic. And thank you for that. That's me.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I think when you start off with some of those statistics around poverty, I think there's no more compelling case really for the minimum wage than that, actually, for me. I was at a conference last week and I think we had Peter Kelly from the Poverty Alliance speaking, and I think the stat he gave was something like 20% of people in Scotland live in poverty. That's 1 in 5 people. Now I can look around me today and think I've got the painters and decorators in, I'm in my house. I think actually that means that just in this small circle of people I've got in here today, if I'm to take that 20%, that's a big proportion of people living in poverty. And we have, I think, a duty as a citizen actually to be doing something about this. And I know certainly in the social enterprise movement, we've got so many of our organisations, and I'm really pleased we're going to hear from Thiago next, who I know is absolutely passionate on all things around not just living wage, but much broader in terms of his recruitment approach, which I think is, it's what we as social enterprises should really be here to do. So I have got some questions for you, but I'm going to come back to them at the end, if I may, and I can see questions starting to come through in the chat as well. So we'll come to all of those at the end. If you've got any more, keep posting them. But I'm really delighted to bring on Thiago, who is going to tell us from, I guess, his perspective as a social enterprise about why they use the living wage. And I know go beyond that in terms of how they look at their recruitment to some degree as well. So over to you, Thiago.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, Rachel. I think Rachel has done a very good presentation. Was very few left for us to talk about, but I'm going to try to bring some experience about Passion for Social. Well, starting from what Naomi said about the recruitment, I think when we talk about the living wage, it helps a lot to have the recruitment, especially because it increases the number of applications and also the quality of the applications. One of the things that we really felt the change is because we are a living wage company since July 2020, and before that our applications were very few, and technically speaking they weren't the best ones. So after we became a living wage, we did have more applications, more qualified applications from the new recruits. And one of the things that I think by Passion for Social's experience, since we set up the company 3 years ago in 2018, we intended to have a decent salary for all our employees. But as many of you know, being a social enterprise, starting from scratch is not very easy, and the revenue is very low, and we don't get all the resources, especially the financial resources that we need. So we had to put these in the plans to be. So since we got sustainable in 2020, in June 2020, we start paying living wage right after that we reached the sustainability, and we could perceive the happiness of our employees, because many of them, they were earning the minimum wage before we got sustainable, and since and when we moved to the real living wage salaries, they indeed, their confidence raised. They felt much more respected by the company, and even the feeling of ownership, appropriation, and partnership about Passion for Social increased. So they could feel that we, as a social enterprise, we are thinking about them, we value them. And this is one of the things that for me, it was the most important, is noticing that they can feel recognized by every single member of staff, and especially for the directors of Passion for Social. And I think one of the best things that we need to do as a social enterprise is paying attention to these in using the living wage as a process to increase the confidence of our employees, especially for us, Passion for Social, that when our mission is to create sustainable employment opportunities for disabled people, and paying them as the private for the for-profit market pays is one of our goals. So pay as much as the property market is paying. And I think if we put this as a goal when we set up the company, when we engage with employees and new recruitments, I think it's one of the most important parts of being social conscious or social responsible. Well, from my end, I think that's it. I don't have many things to say about it, especially because Rachel brought so much information. So I will leave it with Naomi now. Thank you.
Thank you, Thiago. I'm on the verge of needing to sneeze, so if I was thinking, talk for an extra couple of minutes. So if I sneeze, apologies. If not, I'll do a quick handover to Elaine, and I'll come back to it. But I really appreciated as you spoke. There was also your honesty about at what point you could do this within your social enterprise, having been at that startup stage when revenue and income is tight. So we might come back to that a little bit in the questions, I think, because I think that's important to a lot of our attendees and people that come to our sessions. But for now, I'm really pleased to hear about a perspective from Elaine, again, another living wage employer, I guess, who's going to give us a sense of why it's important to them, their staff and their business. So over to you, Elaine.
Thanks, Naomi. Yes, so I'm Elaine from the Edinburgh Remakery. We are a social enterprise that's been going since 2016 as the Edinburgh Remakery on Leith Walk. And we've been a living wage accredited provider for quite some time. And I'm hoping to try and explain why we are an accredited provider and what the value to us of being an accredited provider is. So we exist to educate people around repair and reuse, a circular economy. And at the heart of everything we do, our mission, vision and values is about promoting a greener, fairer Scotland. So it was an absolute no-brainer to us that as part of that, we should pay our staff the living wage, because we wanted to make sure that we were tackling in-work poverty, as Rachel alluded to earlier. And we value our staff, we value our community, and it was a message that we wanted to have embedded. So approaching the Living Wage organisation and Rachel and getting ourselves accredited was incredibly important to us as part of who we are and what we do. We became an accredited provider, as I said, because overall that's about a fairer, greener Scotland. But there were other values to that. So firstly, it showed our staff that we valued them. And that was incredibly important for us because we do, and we want to ensure that we're paying a decent wage for a decent job. And that has paid dividends for us because we've all gone through very rocky 18 months with COVID, but we have managed to maintain and retain our staff. And also we've been able to attract new talent as well. And a big part of attracting new talent is the fact that when we do recruitment, as Thiago had mentioned, that we can put that in our adverts, and that sends the right message right from the very beginning about the fact that we value attracting a talent pool that would want to work for us because we're a fair and equal employer. We also feel that it's very important that we demonstrate the living wage accreditation to our future employees, our existing employees, our stakeholders, to the wider community, that it reflects well upon the Edinburgh Remakery, and also to funders. And on that note, funding was not part of our business model before COVID, but my goodness, it became that during COVID. And I have to say that being able to say that we are a living wage accredited provider on our funding applications was very important. Again, it reflected to the funders that we were a viable, financially viable and fair employer. So it gave them confidence to provide funding for us. The advantages are there, and as I say, we wouldn't dream of not being a living wage employer now. We just feel overwhelmingly that the advantages are huge for all of us. What I would say is that if you're dithering about whether it's a thing for you, the process is so simple, and Rachel and her team guide you through that process. It's not a bureaucratic nightmare, very simple form, very simple process. And if you can meet that criteria, then it just seems to me like you should do it. I was asked to highlight if I thought there was any downside to being a living wage accredited provider, and there isn't really. However, I would say that sometimes the alignment of government policy and funding for other things doesn't sometimes help social enterprises who are a living wage accredited provider, and that came to the fore with the Kickstart programme that has recently been rolled out. And obviously the funding for that was for the real wage, but they weren't funding for those who would offer and need to offer the living wage because you were an accredited provider. So there was a little mixed match there in funding. Wasn't fully covering if you were a real living wage employer. And so that was a slight problem. And obviously for social enterprises who every penny was counting, it wasn't really a free funded programme because we had to top that up. And of course, it was a no-brainer that we would top that up because we wouldn't consider not paying somebody that. And we also wanted to keep our accreditation. So that was the only downside, that sometimes there could be a mismatch with funding that creates a little bit of a problem. But hopefully that will be ironed out. I've moaned about the Kickstart and that issue before, so you never know, watch this space. But overall, I would just really urge anybody out there who's considering or wavering and not quite sure, speak to Rachel and her team. She will guide you through the process. It's so simple, and it is just, the benefits just are enormous for your staff, for your business, and for your reputation. So yeah, I only got good things to say about the accreditation. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. It's prompted quite a few more questions in my head, and I'll probably come back to the Kickstart one if I may, because I think that kind of thing's so important. I'm going to ask all of our panelists to just come back in and join us for the Q&A and just for their thoughts and comments. So obviously, Rachel, we've had people who are very much pro living wage on this, and we were keen to hear about some of the negatives as well, because I think obviously we like to give a balanced report out to people. As much as we sit here and go, we just think it's a no-brainer. I share that view with Elaine. You know, our mission, vision and values is about people and planet. So it is a no-brainer, I think, for our sector. Accreditation's come up a few times. Could I just these are very specific questions. How long generally does it take, and is there a cost to going through the accreditation process?
So accreditation itself can be organised within a week or two. So what it comes down to is, are you meeting the criteria that I highlighted? So if you are already paying the living wage to your staff and you know the situation with any contracted staff, then it's as straightforward as getting the details, filling in the application, and then we have a call with you to check that you're compliant with the requirements. And it's as simple as that. You know, it really can be done quickly. Employers who tend to find it takes longer are if they have to go through a process of uplifting some staff, or maybe they have a more complicated situation with any contractors they use. And in terms of a cost, there is. So there is a fee attached to accreditation, because you, as part of your accreditation, you're paying to use the trademarked We're a Living Wage Employer logo, which hopefully you've all seen about. So it starts at £60 plus VAT. So that is for employers who have less than 10 staff, or up to 10, should I say. The next bracket is 11 to 50 staff, which is 120. And then there's another two brackets, but the top bracket for social enterprises, since you're within the third sector, would be £480 plus VAT per year, but that is for 500 or more staff. So it's, you know, the rates are within third sector, they're tried to be as balanced as possible. So you're gaining the benefits of the accreditation, but the fee isn't a barrier to gaining the accreditation.
Thank you, Rachel. It's just really helpful to have those bits of detail, because I know they're the questions that I certainly had in my mind as you were talking. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points. One, again, is another very practical question. You obviously talked about it being direct staff and contractors. Some organisations, and I have to say, we at Social Enterprise Scotland have had this conversation as well about when we've occasionally used freelancers. Is there a set rate in terms of bringing people in for even short periods as freelance staff, and is there a rate associated with that?
So in terms of freelancers, we would always ask you to go back to that, although you wouldn't define them as in terms of like a third party contracted worker because they are a freelancer. We would ask you to treat them in the same way. So if they're working 2 hours or more a week for 8 weeks consecutively, they must be considered if you're looking at accreditation. But if, as you say, they're with you for a shorter period, but say they're working quite a lot of hours for you, you know, for say 4 or 5 weeks, but it does amount to, if they're doing quite a large project for you or something like that, what we would say is, where possible, we would ask you to ensure they're paid at least the £9.50 or whatever's appropriate for their skills. But for us, it's about saying, you know, hitting that minimum. £9.50 is the minimum we're asking you to pay anyone, just to ensure that whatever work they're doing for you, they are able to meet the basic costs of living.
Thank you. I mean, I know when we looked at it, we obviously tried to take into account, obviously they're then responsible for their own bits of national insurance. They may not fill pension schemes. So we actually did it at a higher rate to try and take some of that into account. So I think, you know, it would be a plea. It would be brilliant if there was almost a set rate for the minimum for a freelancer, because like I say, I know we had to look at it and almost try and work it out, and that can be quite hard. And again, for very early stage organisations, particularly if you've got short-term pieces of work, freelance is an opportunity. So I think it'd be great if there was that kind of guide out there. So it's a bit of a plea.
Yeah, definitely something I can take back. Absolutely.
Another just couple of questions. Obviously you spoke about it being anyone over 18, and I mean, I guess most organisations staff are in that older bracket. Is there any guidance if people were employing people that were younger? And I'm thinking particularly, obviously, things like minimum wage talks about apprenticeship schemes, some of the programs that are out there in terms of young person guarantee stuff at the moment. Would you always say that, albeit the living wage accreditation is for over 18-year-olds, should the living wage fit people 16 and above, or is there a different living wage for just that group of people?
So there's no different living wage as such. We don't have a rate that's calculated for 16 and 17-year-olds. And what we would recommend is, if you can, pay them the living wage, but we don't mandate it, because we recognise that within 16 and 17-year-olds, you know, there may be slightly less financial responsibilities, but what we would always try and encourage employers to pay is above the minimum wage, because the minimum wage for 16 and 17-year-olds is particularly low. I don't know the figure off the top of my head at the moment, but I believe it's £4 something. Have you got it in front of you?
I did look it up, and I'm just I'm back on my Google. This was 2021. I think this was the right 16 and 17-year-olds, £4.62.
It's exceptionally low, you know, and it's just, for us, you know, if an employer is in the situation where that is all they can pay, then we appreciate that. You know, we're not trying to be the living wage police, and I hope that Elaine and Thiago would agree with that. You know, we're trying to support employers to do the best they can for their staff. And if you have 16 and 17-year-old staff, you know, if you can pay them above the minimum wage, fantastic. We do have some employers who go the full hog and say, do you know what, we're going to pay them the full £9.50, which is fantastic, but we just don't mandate it, because we know it's not always financially possible.
Thank you. Again, really helpful. I mean, I look back even to when I was, it's a few years ago now, but 15, 16, and I think I was being paid more than £4.62 then, even at such a young age, just on a Saturday job. So, you know, I wanted to pick up on that. Just a couple of questions, perhaps just for you, and these are probably comments others can come in with, and then I'll go back out to the rest of our panelists. So I was really interested as you were talking about Glasgow and some of the stats that if everyone was paid within that city region on the living wage, the impact on the economy would be an extra 27 million into the economy, which was in terms of, I look at all the reports that are out there in terms of economic recovery post-COVID, and again, the words no-brainer just come to me, but I just wonder how many local authorities are registered as living wage employers. And the reason I ask that is obviously because of the contractor obligation, and because a number of our social enterprises would then work with local authorities. Are all local authorities registered?
No, they aren't all. So 22 out of 32 are. So we are trying to work with the others to get them on board. But yeah, so currently there's a full list on our website. I'm not going to attempt to list all 22. But for instance, like Elaine being in Edinburgh, Edinburgh City Council are big supporter, and many of the councils that are accredited are massive supporters. And we're constantly trying to engage with the others, because we know that that councils and their procurement processes can have a massive impact on local areas and on local economies, on what they can then bring if they use their capacity as a procurer of services to get those roles paid as living wage or fund them at living wage. And as Elaine mentioned as well about, you know, agreeing funding, you know, whether that's from an external funder or from a council scheme, you know, being a living wage employer can also be really beneficial with that, because it ticks a box on these, you know, it does become part of a tick box exercise, particularly if rather than funding, it's more of a procurement side. If you're providing a service that the council's looking for, it can help in any bids with that, which in turn can then help you continue to pay the living wage or hire more staff at the living wage, depending on the situation.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful to know. It's really interesting that 10 aren't again. And I think, you know, particularly, and I know I'm always hopeful. I think we're optimistic as a sector, because we have to keep hold of our optimism, I think. But, you know, I look at the kind of the conversations that are happening around community wealth building, and I guess the more that takes hold in different local authorities, you know, you certainly can't sign up for a community wealth building agenda, I don't think, and not sign up as a living wage employer at the same time. So I wonder whether there'll be some interesting alignment as that agenda really takes off. And I think more work around that. I haven't had chance yet to pick up on all the programme for government stuff that was announced yesterday, but you know, the fact that we've got ministers now looking at the community wealth building agenda, it's surely going to become more prominent. Obviously, that's the Scottish Government. Kickstart. Elaine, I'll perhaps bring you in on this. And Thiago, I don't know whether you've used Kickstart at all, but I was really interested that obviously that programme, certainly at its early stage and presumably at its current stage, doesn't build in or account for the living wage. Do you think that would be likely to change, Rachel? And what are the living wage organisation doing to perhaps lobby for that? Is it possible at all?
So because Kickstart falls with the UK government, if I'm completely honest, I'm not hopeful it will change, because the UK government are not supportive of the real living wage. The Scottish government are. So it would be a different situation if Scottish government were involved. We would feel there was more of a platform for us to speak to them about that. But if I'm honest, we don't have a fantastic lobbying relationship with the UK government, because their views do differ on the wage situation to ours and to the Living Wage Foundation. It is really unfortunate that Kickstart is at minimum wage, and I know that Elaine and other employers have found it's really difficult, because you want to have that opportunity to take on a staff member. But as an organisation, we have taken the position that, you know, Kickstart they are employees. You know, while you are providing them with an employment opportunity, they are still bringing benefit into your organisation. So while we know that is really challenging, and it's been a challenge for many employers who wanted to become accredited and haven't been able to top up Kickstart. But for us, it's that principle of, you know, these people who need a job, they need a living wage as well. It's about it not just being any job, it's about it being a good job. And that's what we hope that our living wage employers who are able to top up the Kickstart scheme are then able to, you know, give them a job that makes them feel valued and secure in that period as well, and a real chance at building better employment opportunities for them beyond the Kickstart scheme as well.
No, thank you. I mean, I think the Kickstart's a great opportunity actually for lots of our social enterprises, but I've also kind of said we have to be creating real jobs for people and real opportunities. We shouldn't just be using those schemes to just help our organisations. At the very heart of them, it's about helping the individuals, and I think all of our social enterprises would come back to that. Elaine, I just wondered, I was just looking up, I think the national living wage, because I've been looking up my stats again, is £8.91, and someone could probably correct me on that. So presumably, Elaine, for you to use the Kickstart programme, you have to make up that kind of, let's call it 60 pence difference per hour.
Yeah, and you know, it's not a lot of money, but it's the principle of the thing, because Kickstart, right from the heart of it, I think was designed for the big companies, you know, it could take 30 or whatever, and this third sector has been the poor relation in this, I feel. You'll have to rein me in because I'm annoyed about it. So, you know, right away we were on the wrong footing for that. But we desperately want to support that programme because we feel that we are a sector that is best placed, in fact, to help those young people in a very nurturing environment. So it annoys me if they're presenting this as a fully funded, lovely programme when it actually isn't for social enterprises, because in order to participate, we have to top it up. And if we're just taking one, but if you were wanting to take 2 or 3, then all that mounts up. And at a time where COVID has really impacted social enterprise with their income generation, etc., it does make a difference. But so you're torn between a rock and a hard place about, you value the living wage, you want to do that for your staff, you value the accreditation, but in doing so, Kickstart becomes a problem. So we had to think long and hard about it. And obviously we got a Kickstart person and we do pay them the living wage, but it didn't sit comfortably with me because of that, the two policies not aligning. So sorry about my moan, and that's not directed at accredited living wage, but it is just another hurdle that we had to overcome.
Yeah, no, I guess it's always the challenge, isn't it? I guess, and again, I guess we've just seen the kind of the changes to national insurance announced yesterday, and of course it's always that challenge when some stuff step in the UK, but how does that impact in terms of Scotland, and how does it translate is never easy. So it probably won't be the only issue in this field that we're talking about, given the announcements of yesterday. Thiago, I wanted to come in, and I might just have to turn my camera off while you're answering the question, because my painters were just trying to ask me a question too. But obviously, Passion for Social does a lot of work with organisations around branding. And I just wondered if it's not too cheeky, what do you think is that? What does the accreditation of being the living wage employer also give you in terms of helping you build the brand that you want to build as a social enterprise?
I think mostly when we have the badge, or the living wage badge, it helps us especially to get in touch with bigger companies like the NHS, or participate in tenders, like public tenders. It gives a much more credit. So the accreditation serves for the credit to approach the new clients, to approach the partners. So it's a kind of thing that helps a lot in general to start a conversation, because it's something that the people can see that we are doing what we are preaching. So it's pretty much that. I think it's very in line what Elaine said about we are a social enterprise. We think about the social, we think about the people, and if you're not doing at least the real living wage, we are not doing our jobs correctly. So that's one of the things. So it helps when we think about the brand. If you have this in your email signature or in your website, it helps a lot, because it shows that you are concerned about what you're doing. So pretty much, if we would advise any social enterprise to have it, please have it.
No, thank you, Thiago. I think it's really important, because, that's what I guess a lot of why I was asking the question about local authorities that are signed up, because for me, it's that, sometimes accreditation schemes can be quite expensive for social enterprises to go through. And in my mind, the beauty of the living wage one is that actually it's not expensive to go through, and it absolutely sits at our core principles as organisations. So it gives you that accreditation stamp. And I'm doing work at the moment with Social Enterprise Scotland all around the Bisocial Challenge, and particularly looking at selling through supply chains to corporate companies. And again, it's that external stamp is a really good thing that organisations can use when they're approaching people for work, for business, to show, and I guess to show that someone else has validated the impact that they make, because we can all talk about our impact, but sometimes that external accreditation around our impact is really important. And this to me is a critical one. If our impact's not on people, what are we here for?
I think what you're saying is very valid, especially I have real cases about that, because we are part also of the RBS Accelerator program. And in the RBS Accelerator program, there are all kinds of enterprises, so for-profit, non-profit, social enterprises, and in our signature, in our email signature, we have the living wage there, and some of the entrepreneurs in the accelerator program, they asked me about the living wage and how they could get the stamp, and it's a real thing. Like people really pay attention to this. So.
Thank you. It's almost like you read my mind there, because my next question that I was going to ask, perhaps to Elaine and yourself, Thiago, is what's the role of social enterprise in promoting the living wage as the right thing to do for our communities? And to some degree, you've already talked about your role there as an advocate for the living wage. Elaine, I wondered, have you come across that as well? Where do people ask questions because of the stamp? Have you been able to use your accreditation as a bit of a platform to encourage other people to do the same?
Yeah, it's on our website, it's on our shop window, etc. So it can become a talking point, what is that? But I think, the more that we sort of highlight it, we have periods of time where we promote it on our social media, because it's very important for us to engage the community. But the community, in its widest sense, is businesses as well. So we deal with lots of businesses. So I think it's just very important that us as a social enterprise or a living wage organisation, if we're dealing with the business through our e-waste and they're not, it might make them ask the question, what is that? Why are we not doing that? So we just try through all avenues to highlight the benefits of it. And it starts a conversation. We don't ram it down people's throats, but I think that just sort of having that presence, the logo is striking. It just plants a seed in people's minds, doesn't it? So yeah, and we're very happy to always, if there was another social enterprise that just wanted information about how did you go through that, what did you find, then we are always happy to share our experience of it. So yeah, we will come at it whatever which way, but the main thing is that we're proud of it and that we try to broadcast that.
Thank you. Really encouraging to hear. I think I'm conscious we've got a few more minutes for questions, so if there's something that's not been answered, please do come back in. Rachel, I can see you've been answering some bits in the chat as well, which is brilliant. Obviously everyone knows, and we'll share the slides after the session, so they'll have your contacts if they've got more detailed questions for their organisation about going through that accreditation process with you. I just wanted to come back to a comment that you made, Thiago, because I think this is, I know we've got a few early stage entrepreneurs on our call today, because I'm just looking through the list, and I just wondered, obviously you said at the beginning it was quite difficult at the point when your own revenues were quite unstable. At what point did you, but you talked about always having a sense that this is what you needed to do. Did you set a kind of target in your head or on paper or with your board about when we hit this much on our turnover, this is when we'll do this? Because I'm just conscious we can all set out with something in mind, but we can also forget things if we're not careful. So did you have a target that almost acted as your trigger to say we can do it now? Or was it about a number of employees? Was it about turnover? Just perhaps let us know a bit about that.
Yes. Well, we always had this in mind to have like a proper payment for our for the roles that we have. So we are not there yet. We are already a living wage, but we are not there yet. We really want to increase the salaries to be compatible with the market, with the profit, for-profit market. But yes, since we established the company since the beginning, we put this up as a target to be compatible with the market according to the turnover. So as much revenue we get, so every time we do our projections, thinking about paying a better salary. It's for everyone. So as a social enterprise, most of you know, we reinvest our profit into the company. So the reinvestment for us is paying better rates, paying better salaries for everyone. So, for example, even myself, that I am one of the directors, I don't earn the money of a director. So we are far away from a director that if I would go to a charity, like a consistent and big charity, or even for profit, I'm way below it. But because of this policy that we have, that we are keeping increasing the salaries, this is a goal for the company. So every time we got the turnover we are expecting to have, we give increases for our team. So keeping the I'm aware that we are going to increase the living wage again. I don't know, Rachel maybe can answer that better, but I'm aware that we are going to increase the salaries again. We are preparing for the last months to have this increase, so not to lose the pace of the salary compatibility in the market. So yes, when we set up the company, we need to think about that. We need to make projections. We need to prepare for it. And you're right. If you just put this, oh, that's a thought, and forget about this, it's never going to happen. So it needs to be there in the paper.
Thank you, really helpful. I might just come in on that question back to Rachel, because that's a really good one to ask, and I hadn't thought of it, and it's not coming up in the chat, so thank you for that. And then I'm just going to come back and I'm going to ask Rachel just that question about is the rate set to increase? But then once we've done that, I'm just going to finish today's session with just asking both Thiago and Elaine, what's the one, if you were to draw out one benefit to your organisation of why you've become a living wage accredited employer, what would that one absolute standout benefit be? So I'm giving you notice that that's the question, so you can come up with a fabulous answer. And Rachel, is the rate for the real living wage set to stay the same? Is it set to increase, and how often is it reviewed?
So I've just realised I should have talked about that in the presentation, all the things I talked about, and I missed that. So the new rate is announced each November. So we have a week called Living Wage Week in November. It should be the first week in November. This year it's the week of the 15th, because we're moving outside of COP26. We don't want to be in any kind of competition with COP26. So we're going out with, so this year the new rate will be announced on the 15th of November. So, and at that point, already accredited employers from that point have 6 months to implement that rate for their staff. So they have until the beginning of May the following year. It's the same every year. We allow the 6 months because we don't give any advance notice of it. It's like a hotly held secret. So, you know, in the next kind of 8-9 weeks, all we're going to get is, do you know the rate? Do you know the rate? And we don't know it yet. We don't know it till about a week before. So, so it's this hotly held secret. And then there's the big announcement on the Monday. It's generally picked up in the press. Sometimes somebody from Living Wage Foundation gets on BBC News. Not sure how it'll go this year. We'll just need to wait and see. But yeah, so each November new rates announced, and if you're accredited with us, you have 6 months to implement it. Many do implement it sooner. A lot do it round about the beginning of April, beginning of new financial years. Some do it earlier if their financial year is different, but we understand it takes time, and we don't expect employers to a week later be, you know, uplifting their staff to this new rate. So we leave that time as that allowance.
No, that's really helpful. And I guess I'm also thinking, you know, if people have got their cash projections for the year, etc., they need to build
Absolutely.
that in. Excuse my little cough. And I was also going to say you're joining in a very auspicious week, because Social Enterprise Day also happens in that week in November. So it's a brilliant week to be part of.
Excellent.
Just to that last question, just back out to Thiago first and then Elaine.
Oh, for us, it's pretty much that we are doing what we are preaching. That's it. Like we are just if we support our employees, we want to create a sustainable employment opportunities, and not a better start than being a real living wage. I think that's the least that we could do.
Thank you, Thiago. You gave me a great chance to cough too, which was brilliant. Elaine?
Yeah, just the very same, really. If we want to create a greener, fairer Scotland, then that's the crux of it. You know, pay your staff, pay your community the rate that will allow them to contribute and be part of a fairer, greener Scotland. So yeah, and accreditation just focuses the mind on that, I think.
Thank you. I mean, we will share the slides to anyone that registered for today's session, so you'll have Rachel's contact details on that. And I guess we'll look to do some stuff around that week in November as well, in terms of raising the profile. But equally, we don't need to wait just till that week in November. This is a conversation that we should keep pushing and I think feeding in terms of our responses on economic recovery. It's really critical, I think, for us as a sector. So thank you to all of our speakers for today, to Rachel, Thiago and Elaine. I am going away to drink a big glass of water. I feel like I've just got a little tickle in my throat right at the end. Thank you, everyone. And we'll be back again next week with our next webinar. But for now, have a great day. Let's hope we get the sunshine really coming out. And have a great day. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.